Like if you have a big idea, like that is great. And you definitely want to take steps to move forward, but you don't need... Hey, what's up? It's Torie Mathis, your host, and I'm here with the one and only Sean Mathis, founder of Miles Your Time Automotive Museum.
What's going on?
You know, for the last few years, we have put on quite a few events, mostly associated with the museum, some other things. And ever since we started putting on events, I've noticed that we have a lot of people that come to us and either ask us for advice on how to put on events, or they actually ask for our help.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we found on a lot of them, and especially when the event kind of burns out and like doesn't end up happening, is that people try to just way overcomplicate things, especially when it's their very first time and it's it's a brand new idea.
Yeah, it's easy to go and like, especially if you go to an event and you're like, this is an awesome event, I'd love to do this myself. And you're instantly comparing it to something that organization may have been doing that event for years. You know, that was not their first one that was so awesome. Because chances are, if you go to somebody's very first event, there's going to be some telltale signs that this might be one of their first events, because it's going to be a little disoriented. I mean, they're not going to be perfectly organized.
A lot of times they start out smaller too, which is actually really good to start out and not really have a lot of people show up,
mm-hmm.
because then you can work out the details with less people.
That's the first car show we put on was Miles Your Time back in 2017. I don't remember exactly how many we had. Maybe 50 cars showed up. But it was the first event that I have ever been in charge of. And I tried to get as much help as possible, but it really only got so big. But since then, you know, I took what I learned on that first one and applied it to the next year and then the next year. And you know what, now five and like big car shows. And that doesn't include the smaller ones that we've done as well. But I now know so much more and know what needs to be done. And, you know, in any of these events, you can't do them by yourself. So I know now more where I need additional help. And that really hit home when we did the world record event. Again, we'd never done that type of event before. So, I mean, again, we learned certain things that worked and didn't work.
Well, and we did it in the middle of COVID, which was actually probably a good thing, because could you imagine how big that would have been? Like, it ended up being so much bigger than I expected anyway, but I think COVID allowed us to pull back a little bit. Like, I wanted food trucks. I wanted to feed people. I wanted, there are things that, I thought would be really cool. I know we both had, all kinds of ideas that would have been cool, but it was probably good that life forced us to pull back a little bit, because there's a lot of moving parts in these things that I don't think people realize sometimes. So I think it's better, if you have a big idea, that is great. And you definitely want to take steps to move forward, but you don't need every bell and whistle and every little thing that would make it super cool from the very beginning. In fact, that's probably going to make the event worse by trying to throw all those things in there.
Yeah, I think just doing, if an event is what you want to do, just do it and plan for it to be small. You know, it is okay that not a whole lot of people go there, because if it is your first event, you're going to want that opportunity to make some mistakes and make those mistakes in front of as few amount of people as possible, because you will make mistakes.
Well, and we even talk about it with clients with websites. If you have a brand new venture and you want a website, there are people that come in and want the biggest website. I want this 100-page website with all these things and, try to work on all these different pages and details and things. And a lot of times when you're first starting out a venture, things change and you really don't know exactly where things are going to go. It's kind of crazy how they kind of take on a little bit of a life of their own, and you kind of have to be able to be flexible and pivot with where it's actually going. And I think a website is the exact same way. We were talking about Automotive Museum Guide. We have a website that we created, Automotive Museum Guide, when we realized that small museums were really hard to get found because they kind of get buried away with all the other ones. So we created a directory of automotive museums in North America.
Mm-hmm.
And where it was in the very beginning, I mean, it just started out a map. Was Sean's original idea. He's like, I made this map and it's awesome. And so we kind of built the website around that map. And then we added all the details for every single museum. Then we went in there and started categorizing them and figuring out, like, how can we make this work better now that people are actually coming to it? Like, how can we make it work better? How can we make people be able to find it easier? Like, what are people going to do when they come and land on it? And where do we want them to go? And so all of these things kind of came in time. If we would have tried to get it where it's at right now from the very beginning, I think we would have quit.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been possible.
Yeah, it would have. It probably actually, yeah, it wouldn't have been. We probably would have took it the wrong direction because we didn't really know how it was going to work out. Like, it's one of those things that you don't really know what you have until you kind of start really going through it.
Well, not to mention, like, when we launched the website, automotivemuseumguide.com was available for you to go to at any moment. I think we had. I think we may have made the website live with the very first listing of Miles Through Time.
I think so. I think we just had the map and we were like, we'll fill it in.
Yeah, and then just started getting websites as they go. So, in one day it went from 1 to 20. And then over the course of a week, maybe we had 100. I still add museums to it when I find them. Now we're at over 300. 13 of them have closed since we've started. But there's another 8 that are opening right now. And it's still, there's still going to be stuff out there that I'm not going to know until I find it. And when I do, I just add it.
Well, and I think that that's okay too, because you also find other ways that people are using it or other, like, for example, we have found that a couple of the museums are actually using the Automotive Museum Guide page as their actual website because they don't have a website. Like, we could have never planned for that, but how cool is that now we can make what can we do for these museums so that they could use this page a little bit better? What information can we get from them? How can we make it so that it works better for them, and then that they, in turn, drive more traffic to our website. Like, we couldn't have planned for that.
No, but that was also part of, the reason that we did it was to help keep these museums alive, because they don't. Not all of them have their own websites. Not all of them have social media pages. Like, some of them, there was one I had to go back. I'm like, is this still really a museum? Really? Because there's nothing about it other than a couple random articles. It doesn't even have a Google business page. It doesn't have a website, no social media for it, but it does have a name. It's got an address and a phone number, and there's stuff out there where people talk about going to it still. It's a place, but it's one of those things that if you didn't know about it, you're really not going to know about it. And I don't know how these places stay open as long as they do, but a lot of times it's a collection or something that it doesn't really matter, but in that case, it may not matter to who owns it already, but it's pretty neat to be able to visit something like that and have the opportunity to know about something like that to go visit.
Both of us starting our businesses too, they're very different than how we started them. And I don't think that we could have planned for them to be where they are today. And I really like that there's that flexibility and that ability to pivot. I think that when people are afraid to pivot or stay way too strict on what they originally started off, I think that's when some businesses die. Projects die.
Why some of them never get started.
Absolutely. You don't really know what you need and what customers are going to want until you actually start working through it. It's like the whole, you can't learn how to swim from reading a book. Like, you really have to go in there and actually start working through this stuff to figure out what's going to happen. When I first started my business, it was out of necessity when the real estate publishing house that I worked for went under because of the real estate market crash. And I continued to do the magazines, but I did like logos and a couple of brochures. I didn't even really know how to do websites back at that time, but once customers started asking me for websites, I went and took all kinds of courses and taught myself how to design websites. Then when people were asking for social media, I did the exact same thing. And I kept investing in myself and learning new skills so that I could adapt for what my customers wanted so that I could be more valuable to them. If I would have stuck with, just doing logos and brochures, I would probably be kind of bummed out. Like, it probably wouldn't have been as exciting. Like, because for me, I like that I am able to change and get a little bit better and things like that. And for you with the museum, you didn't really know exactly what was going to work when you first started. So you kind of threw out a few things and then kind of like wiggled into it to figure out what was going to work with it.
Right. And the thing, like you had, some of yours too, you didn't even know how to do some of this stuff. And it wasn't until a customer was like, can you do this? And you were like, yeah, I could do that.
I honestly believe I can figure out how to do just about anything. I think now that I'm a little bit older and a little bit further into my career now, I'm not as willing to do everything. I kind of, weigh it out a little bit more.
But now you got a lot more to compare it to. Now you're like, well, I've done something similar to that, and that's not my thing. Or you know more people, and you're like, you can go use this person. And
But in the beginning, woo, heck yeah. You asked if I could do something? Oh, absolutely.
You figure out how to do it, and then you do it. And
then I know if that's something I really wanted to do. And there were some things that we tried that I'm like, I never want to do that. Like, we did tchotchke shit for a while. We printed, we had like vendor accounts, and then we went and found the vendors, and we printed T-shirts and pens and like things like that for people. But I don't think that was I didn't really care for it that much. It just didn't bring me joy.
Yeah, that we would have had to and we almost went down the route of investing in our own printing equipment and looked into all that. And
well, we did the vinyl stuff, a little bit of it. Like we did a little bit of vinyl cutting.
We have a heat press from that.
We did some stuff for ourselves, kind of to see like what it was going to be like. And we did a few T-shirts and things like that, but it just wasn't the thing.
At the antique mall at the museum, there is a screen printing equipment right outside the exit of the museum right now. I looked at it and I'm like, nope. I don't want to do that, man.
But, things like that are always a possibility for anybody. Like, whatever it is that, the project that you have, if what you're doing isn't like really like getting you excited, you can always like try to bring in these little things. It's okay that you didn't have like this master plan and that wasn't part of the master plan in the beginning. In fact, I think it's better if it's not part of the master plan, because when you have the master plan, sometimes that overcomplicates it so much that the master plan never happens. Like these events that drive me crazy. Sean had one recently. We both spent some time on it, and they had so many people involved in it, and there were so many details and like trying to like over detail it, that I think it would have been good just to kind of, let's just do it small. Dozen people test run it. Then the next year we would have some data there that we could say like, this worked, this didn't.
It would have been better to have done it this year during the weekday when less people knew, and just kind of taken that opportunity to work out some kinks, and then from that immediately start planning for the following year on a date that would be easier for more people to attend, and spend that year, getting sponsors and not overcomplicating it, but adding more details to it than what we would have initially done. And instead...
Well, then you've kind of proven the concept, too, right, that, okay, this is actually possible on this small scale. Now, if we took it a little bit harder, bigger, because you don't know what you know until you know.
The thing is what we were initially talking about doing, we could have just done. I mean, you created a logo for it. We could have just been like, all right, that's what we're going to do. And if 2 cars showed up, it doesn't matter, because we still put it out there as doing it, and then still could have then been prepared to do it bigger and better the following year. But at least we got that initial one out. It was a big miss on a learning opportunity.
I agree. Especially on things like that it wasn't going to be in one static location. It was actually going to be a moving event, with the electric vehicles. And so it would have been a good time to at least dry run it and see what's going to happen. I think when people do like motorcycle events and things like that, they obviously run the course first, right?
Absolutely.
And that would have been the opportunity to run the course. Mm-hmm. And I think you can kind of run the course with a small amount of people for any type of event or things like this, just to get a feel for what's actually going to happen.
Well, in that one, we could have done it for, there was a minimal cost to it. There was a little bit of time from some various people, but it was also in conjunction with an event that was already going on. So it's not like anybody was completely going out of their way for the...
No rental location or
no,
anything
nothing like that. So,
Torie
created a logo. Nobody got paid for that. Nobody paid for it. It's there. Initially there's really no reason financially to have not done it. But again, the data we could have collected from that to then apply to the future year, where we could then go, well, we need X amount of sponsors and all this funding and all these things that we then want to do. It still bums me out that we didn't do it.
And I think the want to do things are a good point, because anytime you're starting anything, even like when we started the podcast, like there was lots of things that would have been nice to have, but we didn't even know if it was going to be our thing yet. Like we did say, let's do it for, I don't remember, 50 episodes or whatever. Let's try to get it going and feel it out and see. But we didn't set up anything really. We had like a little backdrop behind us and we sat in front of, a camera, and that was pretty much it. We did have like a small light and stuff like that, but we added things on after that. Even some of the promotion and the other things that I do for it, like I didn't do all that stuff in the beginning. And I think even where we are now, I think there's going to be different things that we do in the future, but we've worked out like so many details, like that didn't work, shit, that didn't work, screwed that, you know what I mean? That if we were really big when we started off and it came out all shitty, like everyone like, what the hell are they doing? It's good that nobody listened in the first 50 episodes because they weren't very good. The sound wasn't very good. We had some hiccups and things like that. So you got to mess things up a little bit on a smaller scale. I think that's a good thing to do.
Right. And not to mention you put all this emphasis on having everything, as grand out from the gate and having it as perfect as you possibly can. And what happens is then you wind up being disappointed. And that disappointment can send you down a road that nobody wants to go down.
Especially if you put a shit ton of money onto it.
Right.
Because your time is always like
time is wasted,
I understand.
Money is wasted. You feel bad, as opposed to just like, let's see what happens and get it out there and try it out, and then we'll do it again and know it's a little bit better and a little bit better. I mean, so many people get caught up on having to have everything so perfect and grand, and they forget about what it was like to play t-ball. First you're hitting the ball off the stick and, you're not very good at it. The ball's sitting right there and they still mix it, and then they finally hit it and you start running and balls go past you. And then finally you start to catch balls. You're hitting balls better. But it's after tons of practice and practice and practice. And I think people forget that shit still takes practice. Like you are never too old to stop practicing this stuff.
I think part of it though is like, even in baseball, if you're using baseball for an example, you look at it looks so easy. It's so like effortless, but it's all that practice that gets it to look effortless. Making, YouTubers that make videos or people on their social media that have all these really big productions and things. It is really easy to look and go like, oh my gosh, hey, like I could do that and maybe I could do that. But you get in there and you realize there's a lot more details and stuff like that it's definitely good to keep things super simple from the beginning, work some things out, add some things. And, you talk about the car show. We definitely, every year, we add a little bit more to the car show, a little bit more. But if you add so many things so quickly, like it's a little overwhelming. And I could see that would scare people off from even taking the opportunity to go out and try these new things. Because I think that every business owner, I think every kid, like you got to go out there and try to do new things. Just like the, selling the tchotchke shit. Like we didn't know if that was going to be our thing, but we tried it. If we wouldn't have, like maybe that would have been like the greatest thing ever and would have made us the $1 million.
We sold dip. Remember Millie Nilly?
That was when I very first started. Like I was just trying to do some business stuff.
That was a sweet business venture.
But it didn't cost a lot of money.
It was delicious.
I went to like different events and I set up a booth and I sold dip mix. There's my own dip mix. So it wasn't like I bought somebody else's dip mix. I don't know if that makes it better.
That goes back to like what we typically do. That came out of nowhere. Just all of a sudden dip. And then it was like, well, here's a name, here's a brand, let's go get the spices.
I learned so much.
And let's go out. I mean, then it was over just as fast.
Well, I got busy enough at work that I wasn't going to go out and hawk dip anymore.
No.
But so when you're starting out, sometimes you got to do some of that stuff just to figure stuff out.
If anything, though, like that, maybe we didn't sell a lot of dip, but it was a perfect exercise to practice what it was like for real to create a brand. I mean, we created a brand for that stuff.
I had orders. I had multiple bulk orders come from Etsy. I got on the homepage of Etsy as like one of their new spotlight people. Like there were some really cool things that came from it. I learned how to take really nice product shots and, product photography and things like that. And I mean, I think that's why I got on the Etsy thing.
Skills we can use.
So those were just, it was a means to an end at the time. And then I took what I needed from it and was like, okay, dip isn't my thing. Standing there at these events is not my thing. But there are things that like you said, I took from it and probably still use some of that stuff today.
Absolutely. Plus, it's neat to look back and go, yeah, we did that.
Especially when we've moved so many times. I think this last time we moved, or the time before, we pull out a box and we're like, what's in here? Oh my gosh, it's milly-nilly wrappers. It's like the packaging that we had been pulling around for like 15 years.
You think we were drug dealers. They're like a bunch of dime bags.
Yeah. I thought that was something else. Something important. And yeah, I think I finally got rid of all the little wrapper type things.
All the labels.
The labels, that's us.
Yeah, we don't need those anymore.
No, we do not need those anymore. At least we're not carrying around all the extra spices that we had bought at that time on bulk because we had those for years too.
Rubbermaid full of a bunch of bags of spices.
You'd open it up and like, woo!
Some of it smelled good.
This is funny. So, but if we would have said, we're selling dip and we would have bought like all this equipment and like, you would have been so invested in it that, oh my gosh, to not do it, like you probably would have kept on doing it even if you were miserable because you put too much into it. I suppose there is a balance of having skin in the game. And so you go through difficult times because some of this stuff isn't easy. But then there's, I think, another hand that if stuff is just not your thing, like figure out how to get it out, like the tchotchke shit. Like that just wasn't the thing.
I think you can commit to something without having to commit to the top level of it. Like your commitment amount can always be the same. It can always, like, you're fully committed to do it at the level that you're capable of doing at that time. And then when you can level up, you're still at the same commitment level. You're just committing to that next level. If you commit to the level you can't achieve, you're destined for failure.
Yeah. I think with some things like business ventures, I think if you're serious about getting into it, I think you do need to say, I am going to try this for a year or 2 years or whatever it is.
All in, man.
Yeah, definitely. But you don't have to like stockpile all the details and all the equipment and all the everything before you start, because I think those are things that you need to work on and get as you go along. Because otherwise, it's a little overwhelming.
Like
and you end up getting the wrong shit. Like you don't know what you need until you get in there a little bit.
What was it in Boise? The office? But they'd go and they'd buy the fancy office and all the equipment.
Oh, yes.
And then the business fails because they spent all this money on office equipment that, like, not even equipment, like just furniture, chairs, and shit that doesn't matter.
Yes. When we were in Idaho, I hired a graphic designer, and one of the guys that I went and I would have people, I'd do a couple projects with people just to make sure that they were a good fit. And this one guy, he was like, had been in advertising a whole bunch. He was very cocky, but said that he was in the beginning of launching quite a few marketing agencies, and all of them, what they would do is go take out loans or get investors or whatever, like a lot, like $50,000, $60,000, $80,000, and rent out some really nice place and get all new furniture and have it so that when they brought clients in, they looked super, super fancy so that they would be able to get clients. But I was like, ooh, like that's not how I want to do it. Like that's not really what my plan is. But then you're paying for all that stuff for your, first clients. All the money goes back to paying that off.
Stupid furniture.
So whether you are, having an event or you're starting a new business venture, or maybe you just want to try out some new services for your business, like definitely go out there, try this stuff out, try something new, see what you think about it, but don't get bogged down in the details. Don't overcomplicate it so that it's so difficult to actually do that you end up not doing it. Like it's okay to dip your toe into something, but make sure that you're still committing to a certain amount of time so that you do put in the proper amount of effort. And then you can add and make things better. Work on the details as you go. I think that's a way that anybody can start something new and get something launched, start a new event. Yeah.
For sure.
Yep. So we have new shows every Tuesday and Thursday, and we would love it if you would come and check us out. And we will see you on the next one.